I did grow up in Manhattan.
I was in eastern Washington.
Medellin, Colombia.
A few hundred meters from the Nile River.
Eastern Washington is punctuated by rivers. You're not far from the Columbia River, you've got the Snake River, and many of these rivers, have hydropower projects on them. We'd visit those sometimes when I was a kid. Some of these dams would allow you to actually go inside and see power turbines where the water was making electricity rather than just walking along the top. So I had a pretty good sense of how they were put together.
I always really liked school from a young age. My older brother got fairly politically active in the early 1980s, took us to a no nukes rally in New York, and I was just excited at the idea of protesting. And I was in first grade, but apparently it was around spring break, and I went to school holding up a protest banner against vacation. Like, no, his was like, no nukes, we want peace, and I was like, no vacation, we want school. I just remember always really, really liking school. And I always kind of knew I wanted to be an academic. In college, I actually was a political science major. I ended up gravitating toward empirical work within political science in sort of questions of American government and why people vote a certain way or why certain laws get passed. And I really liked the discipline or the constraints that having to work with data I felt put on me.
Growing in that environment, it was natural for me to develop a strong appreciation for water and for the importance of water for the life and for society. The topic of my PhD was to look at how human activity, deforestation, changes in land cover, how those could really impact the whole cycle of water. What that study really introduced me is the study of climate and understanding how human activity at a small scale or at large scale could really impact climate significantly.
I love in particular working with my dad. He had beautiful science books that we use for inspiration, and I did won several science fairs at school. He did not finish high school. His siblings did, but he didn't. The education he experienced was not serving him, did not serve him, and how we need to make sure that there are opportunities for all children. And I think he was able to compensate because he was passionate about so many things, but it wasn't easy. What would have been if he had those opportunities, for himself? I often think about him.
There are many places in the world where people do not have any kind of improved water supply at all. It could mean that when a household needed water, some member of the household had to spend a large chunk of their day going and fetching water, typically women and girls.
The point of health insurance is not to improve your health, it's to protect you economically. There are two main problems in US healthcare. One is lack of economic security because not everyone has insurance, and the other is sort of on the healthcare delivery side, the fact that we spend a lot of money on healthcare, more than twice as much as a typical high-income country, and get very little in the way of health benefits to show for it.
You have communities around the world who did very little to contribute to causing the problem of global climate change, but they are at the receiving end in terms of the hazards that could result from climate change.
There are about 250 million kids out of school, and is concentrated in some regions more than others, or in rural areas or underserved communities. If we think about traditional solutions of building schools, right, and hiring and preparing teachers, we're losing those generations.
The thing that really motivated me to get into this was the sense that there is an urgent need. The number of people in the world has grown dramatically since 1900, a factor of maybe 4 or more. And so you're talking about billions and billions of additional people who need water.
Climate change usually does not happen in a vacuum. For example, the Nile without climate change, there is a conflict on water. When we come to look at how, for example, climate change impacts the future of water in the Nile, there are conflicts on water because there are too many people while the amount of water is limited. With climate change, additional water is going to be available. We project through our models that's going to happen. There is evidence in the observation that's already happening.
Part of the impact of a good study should be that it answers some questions, but also makes people think about things differently, and that inevitably will raise new questions. At least to my mind, I feel like we've worked out how to solve the insurance problem. So I think it's now a policy problem, not an intellectual problem. But the question of how to improve healthcare delivery, that's a problem that I think, although many people claim they have the solution, is actually still one that we haven't cracked.
Education is so important. If you secure education for young children, especially kids that have less opportunities, they will encourage the next generations to engage in education, and that at the end give people equal opportunities to economic prosperity. I love that word. That is not the same for everyone, but is how you use the resources to bring to your family and your community what you need to live happy.
As I approach like maybe the last decade or so of my career, I am more interested in broader impacts, especially in these projects that I'm doing now in Bangladesh and another project in Africa. I am increasingly more interested in making sure that the knowledge that we create, the solutions that we develop, reach out to the ordinary people.
I'm going to brag somewhat shamelessly, except to say that it's really not a brag for myself. I feel like it's okay to brag about JPAL because it's really bragging about that, whole organism. I think we've succeeded beyond my wildest dreams. We work in many sectors, healthcare, which is my interest, education, workforce issues, recently launched in criminal justice. We do work on homelessness.
I feel privileged to be here at MIT. The fact that we have so many wonderful people that care about education and that continue to think about what we can do for students in Cambridge, for students in the US, but also for students in the world.
These graduates, very bright graduates, they go around the world and they change the world. In projects like the ones I'm doing, we are trying to be catalysts for supporting those communities.
We operate with the concept that we want to find the things that MIT is really good at and to fund novel ideas in that space. We would like to see the research that we fund inspire new ideas, whether they're policies or technologies or research, that's carried outside MIT and that takes on a life of its own.
Ever since I arrived at MIT, I've been inspired by our community's passion for bringing big ideas and creative solutions to our planet's greatest challenges, from improving healthcare and education, to reducing poverty, to taking on the climate crisis. And nowhere has that spirit been expressed more powerfully than in our collaborations with Community Jameel.